What is up, baseheads? You know who this is. It is your boy, the OG Soda Pop Kid, coming to y'all direct. And this here video is going to be on one certain subject. Okay? Just one certain subject. Let me make sure everything is shut and locked. Okay. Just so you know. And I want, hopefully, some of the owners or representatives or guys from Stetson, I want to see this as well. Okay? So y'all can understand something, because I don't know if cats are really taking me serious on when I tell them how many volts, okay, I'm running my voltage at for those Stetson Bravo-based flex impedance AKs, and how much power I'm getting out of them at the voltage. I do think my intuition tells me that some of them may not believe me, but they could have stood there, Slamology. They could have stood there and looked at my voltage and everything and made sure that I wasn't lying to them. That's what they could have done. You know what I mean? But they didn't, so here we go. The subject is this. I'm wondering why no alternator company or nobody that builds alternators or anything asked me, why are you using Dodge alternators on a GM vehicle? Why aren't you using GM alternators on a GM vehicle? Nobody's never asked me that. They never said, why are you running Dodge alternators? Because when I'm at shows and that, and cats are coming up to me and they're looking at everything and they start asking me questions, you know, about this bracket and all of that. And then I start explaining it to them. I tell them, well, did you know those were Dodge alternators and this is a GM card, and their eyebrows raise up. But of course, just by them looking at the alternators, they can't tell, the average person can't tell that they're Dodge alternators. They know that it's a GM car. So they automatically think, well, those are GM alternators, or they're Dodge Diesel Cummins coming out of 2014 to 2018. Well, these are the small case, but I know that the big cases come out of a 6.7 liter Dodge Diesel Cummins truck. These smaller ones are probably in the Dodge cars, but they got the same ears. The ears line up the same. So the big cases can fit in here, because the big cases is what I had at first. Okay, that was made by Jonathan Patrick back in 2019. Okay. Now I'm going to tell you how and why I started using this particular alternator. When I explained to you guys what was actually on the car and the V-belt setup that I had on here, that had the Ford third generation alternators. Okay, now this is not a Ford, but in the time that I got a hold of those Ford third generations, they were considered one of the strongest alternators out there in its time frame, like around 1993, 94, 95, boom, boom, boom. Okay, and I've always stuck with those alternators because of that at the time, when I was only running one third generation on a 1974 Plymouth Valiant that I had. I had that 190 amp is what it was, a 190 amp alternator. I knew nothing about Ohio generator, none of them. I stayed in my own area. A place called A1 Automotive Electric used to be open, and a guy named Mike ran it. Okay, and before him there was some other guy that ran it. Alright, boom. So that's what I was using on V-belts, and when my teammates from Team Imperial, some of them was running the alternators that Jonathan Patrick was building that was 320s and stuff like that. And I wanted those alternators, and when I finally met Jonathan, he was like, well, you can't put a V-belt on a 320 because it'll slip. But the 250s were the biggest you can put on a V-belt. Okay, so, and then one of those alternators I had Jonathan Patrick test one of those, because those third generations, I ended up going to Ohio Generator when I was going to the competitions in Ohio and meeting you Ohio boys. Team Neo, Vernon Sargent, had told me where he had got his alternators and where to go. But he had a V-belt, he had a serpentine belt setup on his vehicle. And I wasn't paying attention to none of that. All he said is you can go to Ohio Generator and get your alternators built by them and they'll be stronger than what you got stock. Okay, and so I started going there, but I was getting the V-belt setup ones. Okay. So while I had those particular alternators, the alternator place that I started going to after that, when I stopped dealing with Ohio Generator, we had an alternator place called Murray Automotive Electric. We got one in Ford City and one out in Marysville. And when I found out about them, I started going to them because I heard that they knew how to build high amp alternators. Well, at one point in time, they said they used to do it, but they stopped doing it because they felt it wasn't worth it and wasn't enough people around our area wanting to get them that big or that strong, and the company they was getting their parts from, I don't know, they went AWOL. In other words, the word I like to use is incognito. And they weren't able to get those parts anymore. So they stopped doing their version of the high amp alternators. But I was going to them and I was taking my third generation Fords that was built by Ohio Generator to them. And I'm saying, well, these are 250 amps. Can y'all put them back to 250 amps? And they say, yeah, we can. But as little do I know, they wasn't building them back to 250. They was only doing like 150. And I found that out from Jonathan Patrick when I had an extra one with me. When I went to go meet him, I had an extra one, and he put it on the machine to see that it was only doing 150, not 250. He showed it right in front of me. He's like, look, it's showing you what it's only doing. And I ended up getting pissed off and going back to them. I was like, man, you've been lying to me. I've been paying you whatever you asked for 250, but this is only at 150 because I was out in Ohio, out there at Custom Electric Service, and he put it on the machine and showed me on the machine. Okay? And then he went back there in the back and threw it on their machine. He's like, well, I got 190 out of it. Dude, it's supposed to be 250. That's what I was told. Well, somewhere along the line, Kevin is his name. He brought one of these Dodge Alternators out to me. Okay, I'm going to show you the ones because I got the stock 220s. I got the stock 220s. Like I said, Jonathan had made me the 320s, and I explained to him that I thought the 320s at one period in time was bogging down my engine, but they wasn't. And I ended up trading them out when I was getting the stock ones from Advanced Auto Parts. Okay, and I ended up trading them out for these 220s, and then I realized the 220s wasn't doing what the 320s were doing. Okay, so you see all these extra alternators I got laying around? This one here is an extra 320 small case. That's a 320 small case, like the ones I got on the car now. All the rest of these are the big case Dodges. These are the 220s. Stock 220s that you can get from Advanced Auto Parts or AutoZone. So what happened was, Kevin brought out, from Murray Automotive Electric, brought out one of these. They had them there. Okay, the Dodge Diesel, the actual Denso. He brought one out and showed it to me, and he said, hey, you see these Dodge alternators? If you can get somebody to build you a bracket, now this is before I had a serpentine belt bracket. If you can get somebody to build you a bracket, we get these at 240 amps actually. They come in 180, 220, 240 amps. He's like, these come stock at 240 because they go on the big Dodge trucks, Diesel Cummins trucks. He's like, this will be easier because if anything happens to it, we do know how to rebuild these with the same exact parts that comes in them, because we can get these parts to build them back the way that they are. If you can get 4 of them, then they're strong alternators because they come that strong. 240, 220. So when the time finally came for me to get these, then a friend of mine named Curtis Crawford had a couple of these on his car, and he was getting rid of his car. He was getting out of car audio. He sold two of them to me cheap, and I went and got 2 more of them from Advanced Auto Parts. You understand? And went from there. And then once I actually got the bracket situated, y'all know the problems I went through. When I got it situated, these are the alternators they put on were the 220s that the guys at Artius Reynolds and them made fit. They made them fit on the bracket that they had made. That's why I have the Dodge alternators on there, so I stuck with them. And then in 2019, Jonathan did make me some 320s, which nothing never went wrong with them 320s. Okay, I just traded them up. What do you call that when you bring back? I forget what you call that when you bring something back. When you get a new a new power steering pump or something, a core. I cored them out. I cored out the 320s, and I shouldn't have did that if I would have known better. So now I want to go back to the 320s. Now, them 320s that are on there now are from CES, and Tony did them. I originally had called CES when I wanted to go back to the 320s. I called CES, and they told me that they don't no longer build high amp alternators anymore since Jonathan Patrick left them. And they referred me to Tony. They did. I only knew Tony from working at American Base. I had not known that he got into rebuilding alternators. He actually told me that Mike Singer had showed him how to. Okay, I could have went back to Jonathan Patrick, but I felt he was too busy and didn't have no time. He was making all these alternators, and I would never get he would never have no time to make me any. This is what I felt, because he was so busy that I wouldn't get my alternators for 2 months and all this, that, and the other, and I wanted to get my alternators immediately. But I understand when people's busy, they busy. That's why I didn't go back. Okay, and then once I did ask him, when I still had the big case 320s. Okay, you see the difference between the sizes of them big case, small case. See the difference? The big case is it's fatter. It's fatter than this. You see, it's bigger, but the ears still line up in the bracket, though. But the casing is bulkier. Big case, small case. Just so y'all can see the difference. Because if you're looking at them like this, it's like a smidget, the big case is a tad bit taller, it's fatter, though. Well, anyway, like I was saying, when I had the 320s at big case, I did call Jonathan, hit him up and say, hey, keep in mind, he worked at CES when he made me the 320s. I was like, hey, since you're the one that made these, if anything ever go wrong with them, can I send them to you to get them fixed? And he said, yeah, but don't expect to get them right away. And that told me that maybe they'll get fixed, or maybe I took it wrong. Maybe they'll get fixed, maybe they won't. Maybe they'll sit there for 3 months before he fixes them. Maybe he won't. Then that's when I felt, oh, he's too busy. He did make them, but Lord forbid if I buy any off of him now and something breaks, will he fix them, or will he get it to him if he feel like getting to him? This was the thing. That's why I backed off. I was like, all right, well, maybe he don't want to make them for me or something. I was getting this idea. I was like, all right, so let me just go on. You know what I mean? And I moved on. Okay, but seen him at the big Ohio show. You know what I mean? And I figured, well, I want to get, and to be honest with you, those 320s is on there now. I don't know if they're really doing what they're supposed to be doing. And I'm going to tell you why. So let me back away from here. I'm going to back away from here and go back out there. Alright. When I picked these up from Tony, I was like, did you test them to see if they're really doing what they're supposed to? He said, no, I took them to CES and they tested them. I was like, so they're doing 320. I never really got a video or nothing really telling me if that's what they really do. Or what they do at idle. I took his word for it that they're doing 320. I don't know. But I tell you this. These small cases are a tad bit different than the big cases. I'm going to tell you why. I think I did. They have a ground wire on them. The big 320s don't. They just got the one field wire and that's it. The small ones has a ground wire that needs to be grounded to a ground. When I first got these, I didn't know that. I saw two wires on them and I figured the green one is the field, like the green one is the field for the big ones. All I gotta do is hook up the field. When I did that, they wasn't charging. Called Tony up and was like, dude, they're not charging. They're not charging. I drove down there and picked them up. So, with that being said, Tony was like, well, they worked when I tried them here. So what I did, I was going to drive them back out there. But what I did is I went to Murray Automotive Electric to Kevin, and I took a big case one with me, and I took a small case one with me. And I was like, yo, man, can you check these to see if they're even working? I was like, because it's got a green wire and a black wire, and the big ones just had one wire. So he went back there and he came back and he was like, yeah, man, they work fine. You got to ground the black wire. That's why they didn't come on. You got to ground that black wire. Oh. I called Tony up and said the black wire need grounded. He's like, I forgot about that. Okay, so that was that. And I came and hooked them up and then ran them ever since. Okay, just making that crystal. Ran them ever since. Okay. Jonathan Patrick brought up the 300XLs, and I was seeing these big alternators on these cars, these trucks and stuff he had out there. Nice looking alternators. He said, why don't you run them? They do 300 or 240 at idle. Just make a long story short. I was like, wow, that's a lot. But see but then before I left Murray Automotive Electric, I'm getting ahead of myself. He told me to come in the back. He was like, I don't understand this 300 amp and this 400 amp stuff that these guys out in Ohio are doing. He's like, I don't believe they really do what they're supposed to do. I don't get it. What Kevin had said, he's like, I think you guys are wasting your money on that stuff. I think they're just getting paid from you guys because I never heard of a 400 amp. I was like, but you fix alternators. He's like, yeah, I do, but I never heard of no 400 and 300 amp. He's like, let's go put them on a machine and let's see what the difference is between these little 320s and that 220 stock Dodge, the stock Dodge. The 220 stock, this big one here. First he put this little one on the machine and revved it up to 2,000 or more RPMs. And it did, 275 or something. But then he did the same thing with this one. And it did the same thing. Except this one showed that it can do more at idle. This bigger 220. He's like, this 220, man, does damn near 200 amps at idle. This one only does 100 and something amps at idle. You know what I mean? So when he proved it, he put it on there, did that one, and put that one back on, He's like, I don't understand this 320 stuff. That's what I'm talking about. So then I called up Tony, and I was like, yo, dude, and I explained what Kevin had did at Murray Automotive Electric. He was like, the 320 is going to give you every bit of about 320 at 2,000 RPMs. When you're riding down the road, it's going to give you that 320. I was like, it says something totally different on the other machine, but I still took his word for it. You understand? Okay, so I do understand that the 320 big cases, according to John Fitzpatrick, does about 170, 180 at idle. And that's not bad for something just sitting there in a car just running at, 800 80 RPMs. I run idle at 800, between 850 to 900 RPMs do I run my vehicle just sitting there, just sitting still. Okay, and that's pretty good. I wonder if these little ones, I don't know what they actually do at idle, these little ones right here. But the price difference, you know, between a 300 XL and these are like a $500 difference or something like that. You know what I mean? And I felt that my big K320s did the thing. I know they can fit. I know that stuff can stick up in the air without hitting the hood and all that. I know that all that'll work. You know what I mean? It's for the 300 XLs. According to Jonathan, and they can make them point anywhere I want. They can make them point backwards, these charge studs, backwards, and all that as well, if I should get the 300 XLs. But I know at this point, all the money I done spent on car audio, this last time around, hitting my damn credit cards again like I did before, I'm not going to go to PayPal and do the paying for and easily get the... do the paying for and easily get the big ones. And another reason is that I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of 220s, which I can easily give to Jonathan and say, can you make these into 320s? These ones, I have all these extras. Like, I don't just want all these extra amps laying around. Just laying around. You understand? I just got all these extra amps and I go and move to 300 XLs, and then somewhere along the line I'm gonna have to get extra ones of them. That's just more money that's sitting around, and these sitting around, I have all of these. I might as well put all of these to work. I might as well put all of these to work, get the bigger ones again, get the big ones, and what I'm gonna have to do is shave off. There's a piece on these. See that piece back there? Well, there's a piece on here that sticks out. On here on one of the ears, it sticks out, and I shaved them off so they can fit in between the bracket. As you see, I shaved them off. I got to do that every time I get new ones. I bring down like a little cut off saw, and I cut those off. So the day that Jonathan gets done making them, I'll go down there and pick them up, take my saw, cut them off, and hook them up right then and there and drive home and see what the difference is. And then I can take these ones down to him and say, hey, these are stock 220s, can you beef them up? I mean, they got the big cases on them already. I probably just had to put bigger rectifiers in them or whatever to make them 320s and just see how much he's going to charge me to do that, so these just don't be sitting here. I mean, Lord forbid if one of the other ones break, I can throw one of these on momentarily. You know what I mean? Even though they're only doing 220, it'll still do the job, I'm pretty sure. But I'm going to do it like that. But that's the explanation, people. That's what I wanted to explain to y'all. Why do I got Dodge Alternators on a GM vehicle? That's all. That's the reason, man. You see how long these videos take? I done flew through this. It took over 21 minutes to explain all of this stuff going on here. But that's the reason, all right? So it's your boy, the OG Soda Pop Kid. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Peace, people.